So the people who are getting to the generational growth, are they? Have you heard any good stories about any tactics or strategies that they're using that might be a little bit different to others?
Yeah. Uh, I need to think, but the very first thing that comes to my mind, and this is what we told Kyle and Aaron in DFW, is we told them every single practitioner in the United States that is seeing generational growth, with exception of one, and we're talking about a couple of dozen practitioners, with the exception of one, has started church in their home or someone else's home, and most of them in their home. And I think you've seen growth personally through that cell church type of.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we definitely had good experiences, but
Mhm.
we really didn't understand strategically multiplication the way we do now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'd stumbled on a few things like starting things in new people's homes, find a
Mhm.
new guy, go to that house or whatever. We stumbled on that, but we didn't make a policy of it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's interesting, that worked.
Yeah.
So, but that's the learning from the CPM paradigm is pick up these things that are working and make them a standard practice.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but
Uh,
yeah, okay. So if people are pulling church into their own home, what do you think that's contributing to the individual or to the movement by doing that? What's the thinking behind that, Chuck?
I think this is huge. We're trying to plant something that we don't know how it actually works. There's a guy named Kika in Dallas. He's reaching Nepalis. He's reaching ethne. I won't talk about him anymore, but as far as what he's doing, but he said this: how do you tell a woman about having a baby when you've had no baby yourself? And I think that's a very wise piece of counsel. We're training people, we're teaching people, we're expecting people to plant churches, and we never planted church. Another story, David Garrison, when he was coaching Jeff Sundell and those guys, they were having dismal results. They were leading people to Christ, but no baptisms and no churches. And because they were doing evangelism on the street, he said, number one, start a church in your own home. And number two, don't share the gospel on the street. Go to the homes. And as soon as they did that, baptisms went up, church went up, conversions went down. It's interesting. But the sustainability of the movement was there. The foundation was now built. And so Jeff Sundell said, everybody, all the missionaries started their church in their home. And even those churches, when they left the field, multiplied locally and then globally, because the people that were in that church that went to different parts of the world started the church in their own home. So I think that's crucial. And, church, I'm preaching to the choir here. Church is messy, man. It's hard. I've seen more church discipline in the last 5 years with training people to plant churches since they're small and each other's business. Church discipline is being practiced, and it's not comfortable. Nobody likes it, but it's for the flock. We got to enter into that tough stuff. But for all the tough stuff, there's this incredible fellowship, richness that we have because we know one another and we're living life together. And it's highly relational. So, anyways, I think I just left the track there and went
No, that's
somewhere.
okay. That's okay. I'm wondering whether one of the things about our harvest is that there's a sense in which the harvest doesn't want to be, or some of us don't want to be that relational and that tightly connected,
Yeah.
because there's a possibility of being known and
Mm-hmm.
perhaps too people getting too close, and there's probably a resistance to that, and the dip in, dip out, dip in, dip out, hear a message, and so on. It's a lot easier and not quite so confrontational at many levels.
Yeah. I love to be held accountable to a degree, but holding others accountable is part that's hard for me. I don't want to know your mess,
Yeah, yeah.
just live your life and let me be in blissful ignorance, preach a good sermon and let you go out there, that's the hard part for me is,
True, true.
is stewarding and owning the lives of the flock, to
Yeah.
really be vested in the discipleship process.
Okay. So just moving away from being trainers, train, to being actually really planting churches, because I think I've read something from Bill a while ago, just talking about, he and I tic-tac a little bit about this. Everyone wants to be a trainer. No one wants to be a church planter, and there's an intrinsic difference about the level of integration of your life with others' lives when you become a church planter rather than a trainer. Super easy to train. It's fly in, fly out, leave you with it, go well.
Well, I would,
Blessing.
yeah, I would submit to you that if a trainer is not doing what he's training others to do, at the very least, he's not a very good trainer. At the most, I wouldn't categorize the guy as a trainer. You can't train people well, you can, but I would say you've got to at least make the attempts. I
Yeah, you
don't,
got to that's true. You got to be out there having a crack. Yeah, that's
yeah,
right. Yeah, I think so.
muddy boots generals, that's what a trainer needs to be. He needs to
Yeah.
be coming in the training session with his fresh stories from church, fresh stories from evangelism, fresh stories from discipleship. Otherwise, you know what a VFW is in America? It's veterans of foreign wars. It's where old veterans sit around, drink beer, and talk about old war stories. And that's what can happen to a trainer. They're using stories from 1984. And, hey, things changed since 1984. So
Okay.
I got on a hobby horse about
That's all. That's okay. So just going back to your graph, what you're learning at the moment is um, uh, you're getting small groups together, but unless they get to be a certain size, the continuity of that group is it's questionable, dubious. Statistically, it shows it's going to be difficult to sustain the group. So
right.
that means if I looked at your graph with the things that you've actually pulled out of your stats, you've got to try and get more group people in the group, or get some groups to join together.
Right.
And then also you're going to need, from what you're saying to me, is you would like these groups to self-identify as church and own the whole box and dice rather than pretend actually be and do.
Right.
So that they and basically what you told the Fort Worth guys was do church in your own home and share widely, don't focus. Don't look at, you go for the whole city, and that's just exploded because
Right.
I'm asking two questions in one now. But it seems like you yeah, well, I'll just stop there. But they're the issues that you're addressing at this point in time by the sound of it. Size and identification,
Yeah.
self-identifying.
There's another one, and all these things are, we knew them, but they come to life with the Dallas Fort Worth story. Now, by the way, Houston's doing a great job. Charlotte, South Florida, Oklahoma City, San Antonio, there's so many cities that are doing this. So we don't want to elevate one above the other. But one of the things that comes out of the DFW story is they were at this for 5 years. 5 years. And now in the last 8 months, they see this. I think one of the other things is perseverance. You
Yeah.
just have to stay at this.
Yeah. That's a very helpful piece of information.
Mm-hmm. Because one, you can do the exact same techniques, methods that you see thousands of churches being planted, take those exact methods and put them into even a similar people group, and it doesn't show the results. So we got to be convinced that this is what God has called us to do. This is the right thing for me to do, and I will do it regardless of the results. And that's hard when you've shared the gospel 1,000 times and nobody's come to Christ. You start doubting, is my gospel presentation messed up? And, is this calling the church craziness? So you begin to doubt. And that's why that biblical foundation and personal conviction that I've been called to do this is so important. That's what's going to help you go the distance. So.
Okay, so that's, if I was to, one of the questions I've been asking people in Australia is, what obstacles do you think you've overcome already on this journey to form church? You've mentioned one, the perseverance,
Mm-hmm.
and sticking close enough to God so that this is an inner conviction that's carrying you forward into this. Would there be any other things you want to say that you think as a collective you've overcome in terms of obstacles? Might be some things you've personally noticed and overcome. Might be some things that you've noticed across the US.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've overcome is the scrutiny that we take for doing what we're doing the way we're doing it. How can you call that church? How dare you let people baptize other people? That person's not qualified to share the gospel, let alone lead a church. All these questions that are more based on a traditional way of thinking versus a biblical way of thinking. I think we've developed such a biblical foundation for what we're doing. We've at least armed people for how to deal with that kind of scrutiny. So that's an obstacle overcome. That comes from the 4-day intensive training and doing the training on a constant basis. You're really saturating yourself with the scriptures and you're finding answers to these really tough questions. So I would say that's an obstacle overcome. I think in Europe, we're starting to see this. I'm pretty sure in Australia, we're starting to see this. The obstacle was that'll work in India and China, but it will not work in the United States. Well, we have at least a dozen cities now in the United States that is proof positive it will work in the United States. It has its own contextual issues that we need to work on, but we can multiply churches in a gospel-saturated context that is apathetic towards sharing the gospel, making disciples. So Um, that's a very harsh statement. I'm being prophetic. So sorry.
I'm happy to roll with that, Chuck.
Yeah. Uh, I'm trying to think of other obstacles. Uh, I I think that one of the obstacles is that when you when we started this process, we were pulling in all these practitioners that were zealous to get in the fight and see a CPM in the United States. Well, 7 years have gone by, and um, things start to bubble to the top in people's lives. Marriage issues, um, you know, motive issues, character issues, raising kids issues. And so now there's another side that we're addressing with the practitioners, and it's a pastoral side. And one of the questions that you ask as you're going through this process is, how do you shepherd apostolics? It's like herding cats, but they do need shepherding. And it takes a very unique person to shepherd apostolics, because the first place that somebody might go with these folks is, well, you're doing it wrong. You're out there as a pioneer all by yourself. That's why you're all messed up. You know, you need to come back in the fold. They may need a bit of that, but that's not the answer for these people. They need to be shepherded on the go.
On the go while they're out there. You got to go with them.
Right. And Jesus did that. You know, his church, if I can call it a church, was mobile. And he was shepherding apostolics on the way in the harvest. And so these people are a unique breed, and they need a unique kind of shepherding. And we're beginning to figure that out.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So some things that bubble to the top as far as,
Yeah.
I'm sure we've, if Jeff or Troy or, you know, Dave or Carter Cox, those guys, they would give you a truckload, but those are the ones that came to the forefront.
So the basics of multiplying a lot of prayer, doing a lot of evangelism, those things, you would say they've been pretty much overcome?
Overcome, but always in need of constant maintenance.
So
Those,
what have been some of the strategies that have helped mobilize prayer for you guys?
yeah, I think Ying Kai, in one of our very first mid-levels, we were doing the iron on iron, and if I can quote him, he said, "You talk ministry only. You need talk abiding in Christ." And I was like, oh, that guy is so right. Because the iron on iron was all about the ministry. And we didn't check in with the person and their relationship with Christ. And I made it a point right there and then to change my iron on iron and put abiding in Christ right up front. I think that's helped us tremendously. And now in mid-levels and 4 days, abiding is not that people left it out before, but we just realized, hey, you know, you're going to have to make that a priority. Jesus says so, you know, so.
Yeah. Okay. And what about the multiplication of prayer for other prayer partners, people who may not be kind of able to go out? Part of the 60 people, for example, in that church the other day who were going every Sunday from the ages of 8 to 80 or whatever it was. I didn't get, it might have been 6 to 60.
Yeah.
But
No, that was right. It's no exaggeration. 80-year-old ladies going out in the harvest.
Are those guys mobilizing, or are you guys mobilizing other prayer partners out there through newsletters or through text messages or
Yeah.
just networks? What's happening in that area?
Yeah, I don't know enough data to say across the network this is happening. I'll give you
Yep.
two stories though. My dad-in-law is a prayer warrior, and he sends out a prayer request for Deb and I to, I don't know how many people get that thing, but there are people in Turkey praying for us, so it goes out to everybody. DFW, when they started with the outreach, what they did is they said, there's three ways that you can pray for us. You can stay in the room while they go out, and you can pray while they go out. So that recruited a lot of people just to pray. He said the second way that you can pray is you can go out in the neighborhoods that we plan to go to and just walk through the neighborhoods and prayer walk. And then the third way that you can pray is you can go with somebody that's going to share the gospel. You don't have to say a word. All you need to do is be with them and pray. And man, they recruited a lot of folks that maybe they wouldn't have gotten if they would have said, hey, we're just going to share the gospel. They put prayer high priority. That was Ross
Yeah.
did that.
Yeah, that's a good strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
thought that was brilliant. So
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I might just have a look at my questions here, Chuck.
okay, good.
So just in clarifying, most of your teams are just working with the 7 commands. Do you provide that? How do you provide that for them? Is it on a one sheeter, or do you refer people to the website? Because one of the things that we're observing here is that one of my most successful conversations is with someone who's got an A5 piece of paper laminated or just produced by a Vista Print or someone, and he's got 3 circles, testimony model, 7 commands, discovery process, and then maybe mark or something else for long term. That all on one card. It's super simple, super simple. Just give that to the person, and they've got a roadmap then to run on.
Yeah.
Literally, if they're keen, they could start a group with that.
Yeah.
You know, are you seeing any materials like that helpful?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, just so you know, in the American landscape, there is 1,000 different ways of doing this, so
Sure.
it's not all homogeneous by
Yep.
any long shot. Some are using 4 commands and some are using 20 commands. That's an exaggeration, but one of the things that Deb and I did is we put the 411 and the commands together, and we used the 411 format, with the exception of prayer, worship, and member care, has all the elements of the 3/3. And we can put that all on one sheet of paper that's folded in half. So we have everything that you need for training and evangelism and short-term discipleship on one piece of paper that's folded in half. And I just change it because I need to redo my oikos map. But I use the same sheet of paper with 4 different groups for 4 months. And all that I had to do is write out exactly what I wrote out on my piece of paper. And so people are realizing that the road to good, solid DNA, which leads to good, solid multiplication, is simplicity.
Yeah.
Got to get this thing down simple so it's easy to reproduce.
Yeah.
That's key.
Okay. That's one of the